Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. This is, as the topic says there on the screen, this is about taking venue recycling and waste reduction to the next level. We're going to be exploring all the different challenges and solutions involved with helping to build healthy diversion programs and resource conservation programs with a range of different types of venues today, including stadiums, amphitheaters, nightclubs, convention centers, and all. This is part of a periodic series of webinars that Busch Systems does on different topics. My name is Alec Cooey. I'm a senior advisor here with Busch Systems, and I will be your moderator today. We have an excellent panel of speakers joining us. First off, we're going to have Jana Brooks, who has been the manager of events and tenant services for the Maryland Stadium Authority since 2013. In that role, she oversees all operational logistics for the outdoor event spaces for the 85-acre Camden Yards complex, which includes the separate stadiums for the Baltimore Orioles and Baltimore Ravens. Jana is an IAVM certified venue professional. Then we will hear from Amy Dunn, who is the general manager for AEG Presents operations with 3 different concert facilities in Seattle, including the Showbox and the concert series at Mary Moore Park. Amy has worked in the concert venue business for close to 14 years. And finally, we'll have Lindsay Arell, who is the founder and principal of Honeycomb Strategies, a sustainability consulting firm specializing in events, venues, and the hospitality industry. Lindsay is the lead AP and has over 15 years experience in the field. During that time, she has worked with numerous venues, including the new SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, the City of Denver Arts and Venues, the Philadelphia Eagles and Lincoln Financial Field, as well as the Vancouver Convention Center, among others. So we have an excellent panel today. We are going to start out with a series of just brief case study presentations from each of our panelists. Then I'm going to do a high-level overview of some of the best practices involved with how you select and put in place your recycling and waste bin infrastructure. And then following that, we're going to switch into panel mode and make it more of a free flowing conversation where we'll explore a number of the different emerging topics and issues that venues confront with recycling and waste reduction, including how to deal with concessions and food packaging, compost, attendee, and employee engagement, among other topics. We do apologize. We had 2 other panelists who we had originally expected to join us today, Chance Thompson with Viridescent, as well as Mikkel Nelson with the Salt Palace Convention Center. Unfortunately, both have had to cancel at the last minute for unrelated reasons. So we do apologize for that, but fortunately, we've got an excellent panel and a lot of knowledge for the program today. I will point out that we have the presentation slides for each of our panelists will be are posted right now on the GoToWebinar system. And so if you look at your dashboard, you'll see down here where you should see area that says handouts. And if you click to expand that, you can download a PDF copy of all the presentations, as well as we did arrange with Mikkel. We have her presentation, her case study for the Salt Palace Convention Center is also available to download as a PowerPoint that has her actual notes. So if you wanted to learn specifically more about their program, you can see her talking points that she was going to cover with her presentation. We want to make this as interactive as possible. Obviously, it's difficult to do that when we have everybody muted just to keep down background noise, but we do strongly encourage you to submit questions or comments along the way. You'll see where you can open up the input box where you can put in questions for our panelists. I will be looking through those and curating those and asking the ones that we can get to. If there's any that we can't, we'll do our best to come back to them at the end. And failing that, we'll try to respond to some of them just in writing after the program. You can also send a note to myself or the other organizers through the chat function. And this would be another example where if you have observations, things that you've done that are relevant to some of the talking points we're going through, resources, we encourage you just to send a note to us. And where there's an opportunity, I may pull some of those out and share those with other attendees while we're on the line. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to first start off with Jana Brooks. And Jana, go ahead and turn on your camera and mute yourself and take it away.
Hello, everyone. I was going to say good morning, but good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jana Brooks, and I am with the Camden Yards Sports Complex and the Maryland Stadium Authority, who own and operate M&T Bank Stadium and Oriole Park at Camden Yards in Baltimore. So, pleasure to be here and looking forward to sharing with you. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share a few photos before I started with our complex and its glory days pre-COVID. Hopefully we get back to that soon. But these are just some photos of major events that have taken place within M&T Bank Stadium, Oriole Park, as well as a concert in the top left corner that I managed in the parking lot over a course of a 2-day period a couple of years ago. So just wanted to give you a little bit of background. Next slide, please. So the Maryland Stadium Authority was established in 1986 to not only build Oriole Park at Camden Yards, but also to bring football back to Baltimore. So we finished Oriole Park in 1992 and finished M&T Bank Stadium in 1998 for the Ravens. Also part of our portfolio is the B&O warehouse, which is the warehouse that runs next to Oriole Park. It is a mixed-use office space, so there are roughly 14 to 15 office space tenants within the building, as well as a restaurant, multiple banquet spaces, and the laundry spaces, things like kitchens, catering kitchens, things like that. So there's just a bit of factual information on our buildings. Camden Station doesn't get much love. That is a building that is on the north end of our complex. However, there's nothing going on there right now. We are in the middle of HVAC renovation in the warehouse, so that a lot of the product is being stored over there. However, it used to house 2 museums, and that is part of our portfolio as well. And as we mentioned before, it is 85 acres with numerous parking lots, as well as the 4 buildings. Next slide, please. And here is a photo of it. And to provide a little bit of background, we did achieve LEED certification. When I actually started with MSA in November of 2013, and that particular week, we actually had achieved LEED certification for M&T Bank Stadium, LEED E-Bomb, and then LEED Gold, I'm sorry. And then we moved on to the Oriole Park and warehouse certifications, which is where I come in, which is where all of my information that I will present to you is based. We did achieve gold for Oriole Park and silver for the warehouse. Next slide, please. Just to give you a little bit of a visual for those that have not been here. Oriole Park, M&T, and the warehouse, which is the longest operating warehouse on this side of the Mississippi. I hope we still hold that record. Next slide, please. And once again, I did mean to mention this and not have the slide in the correct order, but we, as far as I know right now, we did achieve the notoriety of being the first complex with MLB and NFL stadiums that are completely LEED certified. So that was our goal and what we achieved, and now I will explain how we did that. Next slide, please.
Jana, this is Alec. Just real quick, it's the audio is not coming in totally clear. I'm not sure if it's possible to pull the microphone closer.
I could pull the computer closer. I'm not sure if. Will this help? Can you hear me any better?
Yeah, I think that'll work better. Thanks.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so although we have achieved LEED certification over M&T, most of my presentation will be based on Oriole Park side, as that is the one I was most hands-on with. So as you can see by these photos, we had a little bit of difficulty in messaging, processes, it was a complete culture change for us on the Oriole Park side. So just as a little bit of background, I recycled personally, and at home and in my personal life, before I even took on the sustainability role here. And it was something that I was voluntold to do. I didn't mind taking on, I didn't mind the challenge. However, it was something that I was not knowledgeable in prior to getting things started. So obviously, I noticed that there's something wrong with the photos here. This is the trash compactor in our loading dock, as well as the Coke can that's supposed to be used for recycling has a black bag that is for the black bag for trash, and then the trash can has a clear bag which should be for recycle. So there was a little bit of culture change on this side of the complex, and a lot of it, I guess, is rumored that Oriole Park only used to recycle on game days. So the other 200 some days of the year, everything was just going into trash. So I really wanted to make sure that I focused on back of house first before we extend any messaging into the stands with the fans and visitors to the complex. I wanted to make sure that our personnel understood the mission and vision to correct the behavior that you see in these photos. Next slide. So in order to tackle the process, I worked with our recycling consultant, Reduction in Motion, and we started small. We started with just the MSA offices, and we went from dual stream to single stream. So we removed the trash cans from everyone's offices and put them only in pantries and kitchens. And then we then took that process and then moved it throughout the warehouse, which proved to be a little bit of, it was a little difficult only because they're private offices, right? So you have some that are umbrella company, or they have other offices, or maybe they just, their ownership does not necessarily, move in the sustainability direction at that moment. But that was part of the process that we worked with Reduction in Motion. A few of the pictures to show you the orange bin with the helmet right in the middle of the screen there. Those are the recycling bins that were in Oriole Park. Those were used for game days, and they were a fan favorite of our owner, or of Mrs. Angelos. So we really couldn't replace those because she fell in love with those. But for us, it kind of proved to be a little bit difficult, especially with only having one way to enter the bin from the front. There was no hole or any other thing on the side that if you're walking by, you can throw something in it. So you're left out to really actually take the time to recycle if it's a little bit more complicated or if it inconveniences you in any form or fashion. The bins on the right-hand side are actually my beautiful bins from Busch Systems that were custom ordered, so that we put those in the basement of the warehouse as well as the service level of the ballpark. And that, again, preaches to the fact that I needed basically the back of house to understand the process and the mission in order for them to roll it out to the general public. So we did brand everything recycling orange, and we branded everything trash black. So that is the reason for the color of the bins. And then we performed a waste stream audit. After one baseball game, we collected all the trash, and for those of you that have not taken place in a waste stream audit, they're fun. You should try one. They actually, the best thing about them is that you have to know where you're starting in order to know where you're going, and that's the best piece about a waste stream audit. So we took all the trash bags, we weighed them, we cut them open, we separated everything, and then we weighed them again to make sure that we could get a proper count on diversion. We probably could have picked a better game. That photo is actually from a game that we did. It was I think it was bus day. So we had a number of children here, and they tend to throw anything anywhere. So it wasn't the best measure. We did do a second one, but just so you know, they are extremely informative in helping you push the needle. I put the composting guide down there just because we did attempt to compost. Prior to starting with MSA, they did use to compost with our trash hauler. However, the trash hauler stopped providing that service. And so then we relied on an outside company, but they were servicing many other places other than M&T Bank Stadium and Oriole Park. So he would run out of space. He wouldn't be able to pick up as often as we would like. Therefore, it kind of stalled the process on composting. We also have a spatial issue here. Our loading dock is extremely small at Oriole Park, so we didn't have a place that we could put as much compost as we needed to and only get picked up once a week. It just didn't work out. I do want to try that again, but I might try a different way. I just haven't kind of nailed that process down yet. Next slide. So I'm going to be really honest with you with this slide. I have not done the 2020 numbers yet. I know everyone has been wrecked by COVID, so we didn't have any fans. The warehouse is virtually empty, so I'm pretty sure the numbers are going to be low, but I'm being very transparent with this slide. I'm telling on myself. So in the beginning, when I started, there was only one report that was being processed, and that's the green line that you see from 2012 to 2014. I'm sorry, MSA is a state agency. Therefore, we have a responsibility for state reporting, and our diversion minimum is 30%. So in 2015, I met with our the Department of Maryland Department of the Environment. I met with them, and they told me that we could split the report up. That way, we could see how each stadium was measuring, which was hugely helpful. So 2015 was the first time that we had separated the reports. 2016, as you can see, after we organized the loading dock, after we branded recycling orange, after we branded trash black, you can see that the orange line, we jumped up from 19 to 32%, which was absolutely huge. M&T will kind of leave alone because they were already doing this successfully, but with respect to the orange line in the middle, that was a huge accomplishment to be able to jump up that high just off of implementing new processes and making things extremely clear at the point of separation in the loading dock. Kind of stayed the same in 2017. Unfortunately, we dropped off in 2018, and again in 2019, it got a little worse. It has been an uphill battle, especially being the only person that's in charge of it. But with the turnover of staff between baseball seasons, pushing the message gets to be a little bit difficult. So I am working on improving that. Next slide, please. So here's some enhancements that we made when I spoke about organizing the loading dock. So as you can see, with reduction in motion, we created bilingual signage that goes over each component of recycling in our loading dock. We took actual photos of each, whether it was a black bag, whether it was cardboard boxes broken down. We took pictures of all of that, put that on the signage, again, made it bilingual, and color branding was on point. And we also decided to stencil on the ground as well. So if you are pushing a cart and it's high and you can't necessarily see the signage above you, you can see below you where things are supposed to go. So we have the kitchen oil, the pallets, the bin at the bottom. We on the left, actually in the center, bottom center of the screen, was our original recycling dumpster. We then changed it out to make it orange in the bottom right corner, so that you literally have no option. You know that it's orange. You know that that's for anything that's recycling. The top right photo is where we keep our cardboard balers and where all the cardboard bales and where our cardboard is baled. And then we actually just this season, or this off season, I should say, in the top left, the Orioles did replace the bins or started the process of replacing the bins in the ballpark. So now, again, they stay on brand, they stay on color, and these seem to be going over really well this season. Next slide, please. In addition, we made a couple of other sustainable improvements, and this was just to assist us in the LEED, not only the LEED certification process, but then just to get everything kind of the same across the board. Instead of having one stadium operate one way and one operate the other, we did some things to kind of help fill in that gap, and so we're operating at the same. So just a couple of things here: low flow water fixtures, water reduction. We did an upheaval at the Oriole Park with the substations on how we can measure our energy and water and things like that. So now we have a better track on where our energy spikes are, and if there's a potential leak somewhere, we can see that much easier than someone happening upon it. Next slide, please. One small change that I made, I guess the low-hanging fruit, if you will, was cigarette butt recycling. I was looking for other ways to kind of push the needle and put us on the map when it comes to recycling, and I found a company called TerraCycle. They recycle almost everything. And after having conversations with them, I realized that cigarette butt recycling was something that we had done previously, and then it just kind of fell flat. Now that I have this new company and I have a place to send the cigarette butts to, now we're back in the running. So the photos on the left and right are of the receptacles that I had installed in all of the high traffic smoking areas around the warehouse, where the tenants go outside to smoke, as well as we made some game day improvements. There's a huge planter we have that's filled with sand, and that is where the smoking pen is. If you're at an Oriole game and you step outside and you are smoking, that's where you can leave your cigarette butt. So we basically started collecting cigarette butts from all over, even during Ravens games. And if you click one more time, it's not the next slide, but if you click one more time, you'll actually see that since we started that program, we have recycled almost 126,000 cigarette butts. The non-receptacles are the ones that are shown in the photos, but we have our janitorial staffs at both stadiums collect after special events, after games, and then whatever the warehouse tenants, consume. And then we send those in and we get updates on how we're doing. So we're almost at 126,000 after just 5 years. Next slide, please. And just to wrap everything up, I know this is blank, but click one more time. It's really not that hard. You just have to know your audience, you have to know your environment, know what you can do, and then get a team behind you and obtain buy-in. If you're the sole person that is taking on this responsibility, you have to get everyone on the same page before you can push any agenda, whatever it is. So if you have a buy-in from your concessionaire, your admin offices, any tenants you might have in your building, it really isn't that hard. They just need to know how important it is in the grand scheme of things. And last slide. It's my contact information. If you have any suggestions or anything, any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you.
That was great. I appreciate that overview. Go ahead and keep yourself on for the moment. I'm going to have a couple questions from attendees that I'll ask you in a moment, but pause just real quick before I do that. Two things. One, I want to point out that my colleague Rebecca is going to be dropping, if you'll notice, if you look into the chat function on that dashboard, throughout the program, she'll be copying and pasting different resources and links that you might find helpful. I saw that she's already put one in there about the Green Sports Alliance, and a number of guides that they have available on their website about how to set up fan engagement programs, zero waste programs. So just keep an eye out in the chat box periodically to see what she's dropping in there. And then before we go on, we have a poll question. So this is for all of you to answer. And so the question for you is, what activities are you currently doing at your facility? And check all that apply. Recycling front of house, food organics, both front of house and back of house. If you're doing food recovery, taking unused, unserved portions for donation, or engaging attendees. Obviously, there's lots of different types of activities, but this is what we can, some of the hot ones we can fit in here. So if you can take a minute to type in your answers, and while we're doing that, Jana, for you, we've had several people ask questions about contamination specifically. And so curious from the audits that you did, what you were finding, were there any particular materials that were chronic over others, and how did you address those? And then the part two to that question would be, did you find contamination was predominant on the front of house fan side or on the back of house operational side?
Thank you for the question, and I'm going to answer them in the reverse order. The latter part of your question, it was mostly back of house. We tend, and I will be perfectly honest right now, we tend to get, and I'll get myself in there as well, we tend to get a little lazy in the beginning when it comes to, it's just like, oh, somebody else will handle it. Oh, somebody else will put it in the bin. Oh, somebody else will throw that away. And so that was part of the culture change that had to come into play. Not only when I learned the right thing to do, but just putting things where they belong is really not that difficult. It's a few extra steps. So then to answer the first part of the question, and what were the contaminants? I mean, even that first photo, you could see there was cardboard all over the place. There was, buckets of, I don't know if that was like cheese or paint or something. I don't even know what it was. But that's just something that somebody will walk by and say, oh, somebody else will handle it, and leave it by the compactor or in the compactor. So I can't say that it was one specific type of contaminant. It was just a variety of whatever anybody felt like putting somewhere and that was not in the right place. And that is the big reason why I chose to tackle back of house first. It's easy when you're a concession attendant and you have somebody walking up and you can tell them, hey, when you're finished with this, if you don't get a refill, it's recyclable. It's easy to say that, and they're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Whereas if you have back house and they're just throwing anything anywhere, you're going to have nothing but contaminants. And so it works best here and in our environment to work back of house first. And what I failed to mention earlier, I'm sorry, is that we did go reduction in motion, and I did go to every single concession stand on every level during a game to make sure that all of them knew what products they were selling in their stands and what was recyclable and what was not. We also made, when I referred to taking photos of products that we actually have, whether it's the cup, whether it's the nacho tray, the hot dog, holder, all of that we had specific to each stand. So whatever you're serving, what of those products is going to be recyclable or compostable, if we could get back on that. But yes, it was a combination of things. And again, I'm proud of the progress we've made, but I know we have so much further to go.
Hey, Alec, this is Lindsey Aurel, just to add on to that, because I would echo what was just said, and what we did at the Colorado Convention Center to kind of help our staff see, that they have a responsibility to sort their own trash too. We actually we had every department come in, so sales, event managers, the IT department, they had to come in and do a back of house sort of trash, and they were trained by our housekeeping department just so that they could see that when they put something in the wrong container, it became the housekeeping's problem to deal with it. And so we really just kind of, out of respect for, to know what goes where, but also for them to recognize, this isn't a black hole that goes somewhere. If you put it in the wrong container, then there's someone else that has to do that for you. And that was, I think, really eye-opening and really empowering for the housekeeping department as well, which was really great. And also to address, the contamination, of the compactors, we actually put cages that are locked around our compactors so that to kind of help stop people just putting things wherever. But just to add on.
Thanks, Lindsay.
That's great. Well, good. So, let's go ahead and move on to our next presentation. And I know we'll be coming back to this topic again because these are all definite issues that are pretty universal for many folks. But next we have Amy Dunn from AEG Presents. And Amy, go ahead and bring yourself on, and we'll go from here.
Hi. Thank you, Alec, and also thank you, Jana, for your presentation. You actually gave me, I think, some ideas in some places where I can see where we can improve, so I really appreciated that. As Alec mentioned, I'm the general manager of AEG Presents here in the Pacific Northwest, and I reside in Seattle. I oversee operations at 4 venues. One of them is an 1,100 capacity club, the Show Box, which was built in 1939 and is a staple of Seattle. An 1,800 capacity club called Showbox Soto, also in Seattle, and then 2 boutique amphitheaters, about 5,000 capacity, one of which Marymore Park in Seattle, and then the Spokane Riverfront Pavilion, which we're having our first concert season there this summer, which we're really excited about. And in this picture right here is we had 3 nights of sold out shows with Death Cab for Cutie right before we shut down in 2020. So that's what that picture is from. One of the things when you run small venues is you often have smaller teams managing a lot of different areas. And one of those areas is waste reduction planning and execution of that. Next slide, please. So at the beginning of 2020, my assistant general manager and I took over operations at the Showbox. And this was a picture of what our waste looked like. Both she and I, personally recycle, compost, very passionate about that. And so to see this was pretty disheartening. And we knew that there was something that we needed to do to make a change. Because as you can see, like everything is mixed together, cans, plastic, trash, all of our compost is just all in the same bin. And so we knew that we needed to change that. Next slide, please. So we were failing, the venues were failing at waste mitigation. It was not going well. This was specifically in the 2 Showbox venues. Even though we had separate trash, recycling, and compost bins, everything was contaminated. Bins were not placed properly together throughout the venue, and there was no proper signage. So patrons were just throwing items into the first receptacle that they found. And then our staff and cleaning crews were essentially doing the same thing. So first bin that you find, you just throw whatever you have in your hand in there. So at that time, we were also using plastic cups in the bars, but one of the things is plastic can't be recycled unless it's clean and dry. So when it has things like beer residue and fruit still inside, it's essentially trash at that point. It can't be recycled, so it's going to end up in a landfill. Also, barely any of our food waste was making it into our compost bins, so it was all going into the trash, which actually in the city of Seattle is illegal to throw away food waste. It's supposed to go into a composting bin to go to a composting facility, and so that obviously can't happen when it's in the trash. And also in Seattle, it's more expensive to haul trash than both compost and recycling. And since all of our recycling was contaminated, everything was being hauled away as waste to a landfill, which was costing us a lot of money. I was actually having to constantly call our waste hauler and have them pick up all of our recycling as trash because they weren't picking it up as recycling because it was so contaminated, and that was costing us, I mean, thousands of dollars of extra money every month just in that. And so we knew that it was time to turn things around and make some changes, and so we started that process before we shut down last year. So next slide, please. So the first thing that we did, we set up a waste audit with someone from Seattle Public Utilities. They actually come in and provide this service free to businesses. This is actually something that's very important in this process when you want to change, your plan is doing research and finding out what your local municipalities can accept in terms of recycling and composting. Because if you go in and, as Jana said, if you want to do composting, but they can't accept compost, then your your efforts are kind of futile at that point. You're not going to accomplish anything, and it's just all going to end up in the trash again. So you really need to have an understanding of what locally you're able to do to really refine your waste reduction plan and know that you can be successful in that. So once we talked to our representative and did our research, we came up with our plan of how we were going to execute this. Second, we knew that we needed to cut single-use plastic. We used, plastic cups at the bars, and that was just not working. As I said, with having food waste and everything in it, it can't be recycled. It has to be clean and dry. And and washing and drying all of your plastics in a small venue is not realistic, and that's not going to happen. So we knew that we needed to change that. And at this time, we're actually in the process of hiring a new concessionaire. So part of that process is working with them to make sure that we're only serving products to patrons that come in compostable or aluminum containers. By only allowing compostable or aluminum packaging at our bars, this means we're essentially eliminating trash from all of our front of house operations. It also makes the decision-making process for patrons very easy when they're trying to decide which receptacle to use, because only aluminum cans will go in the recycling bins and then everything else will go in the compost bin. Next slide, please. So one of the things we also learned in this process, doing this research, is we learned where everything is hauled once it leaves our venues, assuming that it's, sorted correctly and everything is in its appropriate place. So composting in Seattle is actually a huge initiative, and it's something that's very important to the city. So any compost, including compostable serviceware, it all goes to an industrial composting facility that's about 30 minutes outside of town called Cedar Grove, where it becomes soil that you can actually purchase. Both businesses and individuals can purchase the soil and use it for gardening and things like that. You can even purchase your compostable products from Cedar Grove, which is actually really great because that they will be accepted, into those composting facilities. And also it kind of closes that loop because you're purchasing it from the same place that it's going to go and then be turned into soil, which I think is really neat. So it was really neat to learn that for us. And I think that's something that we want to teach our staff as well once we roll this out. Next slide, please. One of the things we also discovered, going through this process is that our staff were consuming a very large portion of the plastic water bottles that we were ordering each week to sell. So we reached out to Clean Canteen, who had actually been one of our festival sponsors for us on a festival we used to do called Bumbershoot, and they donated a bunch of Showbox branded water bottles that we gave out to our staff so that they could reuse them and refill their water bottles instead of using, the plastic water bottles that we had available for sale. And having reusable products is, ultimately our goal, something that we would love to be able to offer patrons as well in the future, but that's just not something where we're able to do at this time, but it is something that we're hoping to do in the future. Next slide, please. So now that we've, come up with our front of house waste reduction plan, our next step is to work with the artists performing in our venues to reduce our waste back of house. Artists create a lot of waste. They request things like bottled water and things that come in, like individual bags, and it's just that is a place where it's really hard to reduce waste unless that is a conversation that you can have with the artists on ways to do that in your venue. So last month, AEG actually announced a new initiative called Climate Positive Touring. And Climate Positive Touring is working with AEG One Earth and venue operators, around all the regions to gather some reliable data that will allow our venues and artists to work together to identify sustainability priorities and solutions. And we're really excited to be a part of this new initiative here in Seattle. And we hope that with the work that we are doing with both AEG One Earth and Climate Positive Touring, that we can one day get to a point where our venue waste is minimal or maybe even non-existent. So, thank you.
Great, thanks, Amy. So we're gonna follow the same pattern. We're gonna do another live poll question, and while we're waiting for folks to respond, I'm gonna throw out another question for you. But here's our question, and the poll should pop up on your screen in a moment. How would you rate your recycling and waste reduction program, assuming that you are representing a facility or series of facilities, and if you are working with a number of different types of venues? Just give a general impression, I guess, across those. But are you still in the beginning stages? Do you feel like you're making progress? Are you one of the facilities that has figured out the magic formula to achieving high diversion and actually approaching zero waste? So go ahead and put in your questions there. And while we're waiting, Amy, we had a couple questions about compostable serviceware come in. And I'll throw out the first is just related to expense. Typically, I know it can be more expensive using compostable dinnerware as well as recyclable. Have you found that that is a significant additional cost, and how does that balance out against, do you anticipate realizing extra savings if you can increase disposal costs? Can you address that?
Yeah, so that's one of the things we thought about when we decided to move to compostable products, because they are more expensive, but at the same time, as I mentioned, at least here in Seattle, hauling waste is incredibly expensive, more expensive than it is to actually compost, like do compost and recycling. So it kind of balances that out, because while, you know, purchasing the products is a little more expensive, you're actually saving money, you know, on the disposal side when everything is being hauled. So it kind of balances out. And also, it's just one of those things where, to us, even if it is a little bit more of a cost, it's really important that we're doing our part, you know, in greening and being climate positive. And so I think you just kind of have to weigh what the alternatives are if you're not, you know, working towards that goal of zero waste.
Got it. Okay, great. Rebecca, okay, here we go with the results. So you can see up here, looks like folks are kind of in the middle. We've you know, good balance between those who are still in the somewhat beginning stages, but they've got some got a decent program, and those who feel like they've made some substantial progress. So this is good to see. We'll hold the other question is we'll come back to later on, but now why don't we go to our third speaker, and Lindsay Arell, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Take it away.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk about waste management practices at Red Rocks Amphitheater, located just outside of Denver, Colorado. Next slide. So I actually have a consulting firm called Honeycomb Strategies, and we work with a wide variety of venues and events to help them with their overall sustainability initiatives. So that's from stadiums, convention centers, arenas, and then events themselves. And this kind of gives us a good overview of what's happening around the country in terms of waste practices, and we can kind of share what we see in one location with another for various solutions. Next slide. And you can skip over that one. Next slide. So a little bit about Red Rocks Amphitheater. So it is an outdoor concert venue. It's beautiful, natural red rock built into the side of a hill. It is capacity of about 9,500, and we are having our 80th anniversary this year. And there's about 150 plus events per year, and so that's a combination of concerts. We also do movies and various yoga on the rocks and all types of things. So it's, plus we just have visitors from all over when they're coming to Denver come to the amphitheater just because of its incredible beauty, and it has an incredible view of the city. Next slide. So and that's a good view if you're sitting at the concert, looking out and you see Denver in the far background. But sustainability is one of the core values of the amphitheater because of its natural beauty. And we've had a pretty comprehensive waste reduction program since about 2007. But in addition to that, we have our energy and water conservation, transportation and air quality, looking at procurement, and then also community programs. Next slide. So at the convention center, we do have 3 streams front of house. So we have our single stream recycling, compost, and landfill. And then in addition, and these are new, We are looking at collecting plastic wrap. So a lot of that visqueen that comes, a lot of materials moving in and out of the venue, pallets, and we are also adding cigarette butts this year. Next slide. So we have some great partners to help us achieve our waste diversion. So we have a partnership with Eco Products, which is where we get all of our compostable and recyclable serviceware from. And then GFL is our hauler. And they're great because they have sustainability at the mission of their organization, which I think is somewhat unique for a waste hauling company, but they're really supportive with offering us monthly reports that are incredibly detailed and kind of also highlight what our impacts were by recycling or diverting the materials that we have. Next slide. So I'm also using 2019 diversion rates because 2020 was a bust and we were closed for most of that. But Red Rocks is part of the City and County of Denver Arts and Venues. And so this just shows the 4 different venues under that agency and their various diversion rates. And all of these are supported by a back of house sort. So that is where these numbers are so high. But you can see consistently Red Rocks has some of the highest achieving. McNichols, the one in yellow, is a smaller building that did not have dedicated compactors, or it wasn't on a dedicated route. And so their numbers were very, very low because we couldn't track. And so once we were able to really start tracking their waste, you can see in the course of 1 year, they went from a 10% diversion rate to, at the max in October of 2019, almost 80%. So that adage of you can't, manage what you can't measure is very true here. Once we were able to actually see the numbers, it really motivated the team to change whatever their operation was to kind of align a little bit better with the rest of the venues in that agency. Next slide. But so specifically, this is the breakdown of Red Rocks in 2019. So you can see we had a 22% landfill rate, but the rest is our compost, recycling, and then miscellaneous are those pallets and some metal recycling that we were able to achieve. Next slide. So we're able to get those numbers because of a very advanced back of house sort. So all of the waste that is collected from the amphitheater is brought down to a sorting station where we have a team that after each event and each show goes through and sorts all of the materials into 3 different categories. So landfill, compost, and recyclables. We also do what we call a bull pick. So at the end of the show, they will also go through the amphitheater seating and pick the 3 different waste streams and put them in 3 different bags there. And so because of this back of house sort, we're obviously able to really look at, it's almost doing like a waste audit every single time. We're able to see where our opportunities lie. This year, similar to what was mentioned earlier, we are moving to eliminate, through our partnership with Eco Products, the majority of our serviceware has been compostable, but there were a couple food and beverage vendors who, had some other products in there that weren't compostable. And so at the beginning of 2020, we had sat down to talk about the 2020 season to really look at where are we still producing this landfill trash and look to eliminate it. So for example, one of them was a lemonade vendor that, had a recycling cup, but it had the lemon in it. And so it became a mixed issue. So some of it was compostable, some of it was recyclable. So really streamlining to make sure that everything that a consumer or attendee has fits into one stream. So our solution there was to switch that, since we knew the lemon was part of the way that they served that lemonade, was to make sure that that vendor was moving towards having just everything be compostable. But we are also looking to reduce our usage of compostable products and going to the aluminum cups as well for the 2021 season. Next slide. And this is a picture. We really do take it very seriously, that back of house sort. So at the end of 2019, we were able to complete the building of what we're calling the depot. And so this is a building that was built to house all of our waste sorting activities. And so it's supposed to be implemented for the 2020 season, but got waylaid. So we're really excited to begin using it for 2021. And really the idea is just to make it more comfortable for the sorters, to have a lot more space. All the resources are right there that they would need. And it's just really a beautiful building. And I know we have some questions and some other things, so I'm going to stop there. Next slide has my contact. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So we have one last poll question, and then we'll move on. So let me pull that up here. So this really goes to the concession of food packaging that each of our panelists have talked about. And just curious to learn on your end, is this something that you're trying to actively manage or regulate what is being served through concessions at your facility? So again, if this is relevant to your situation, go ahead and click that. If you are not with a facility that has concessions, then just bypass that one. Lindsay, I do have a couple questions for you. One, and this is I think an interesting one. It has to do with just the picking up process after the show, is going through the amphitheater, doing the bowl pick. What is the actual arrangement that's done with that? Do you have one, each employee is taking 3 different bags and they each, are getting everything as they go along, or is that something they use blowers and put into a big pile, or different teams do different materials? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We have different teams do different picks. So we have 2 people that will go through and get all the recyclables, 2 people that will go through and get all the landfill, and then 2 that will get the compostables.
Got it. Okay, great. And another question was, with the sorting, who is doing that? Is that volunteers or staff? And what is your budget for sorting?
Yeah, so that we work through our janitorial concessionaire, which is Aramark. So that is a paid position, and that's actually, we have that for all 4 of our venues. And I don't know that budget because I don't handle that. But it is generally on game days, I think it's a staff of about 4 people at Red Rocks. At the other facilities, it's a lot smaller, but about 4 to, I think, 6.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and go to the results then from this poll. So it looks like we have quite a few people who are still in the implementing phase, but it looks like, overall, the majority are at least thinking this direction or working this direction, which I suspect, Lindsay, I don't know from your experience, but if we'd asked this question 5 years ago, I suspect it probably would have been a smaller percent that are at least thinking in these terms. So that's great to see. So I am going to go up here as the next speaker, and I'm just going to quickly run through. I don't have a case study, but I want to share from my experience. A lot of my background is on the behavior end. How do you get people to actually recycle and using the bins? And this is something that is easily its own webinar, its own deep focus. But what I want to do is just take a few minutes just to talk about some high high-level principles and best practices to keep in mind in terms of how you design and set up your bin infrastructure. These are general principles. Every facility has its own nuances, and not everything is always going to apply. But these are some general points that I want to share. The first is to keep in mind the mindset of the people that you are trying to get to interact with bins. And I have what I call the Homer principle, which is that you can't assume that people are focusing their attention and spending a lot of time really paying attention to bins. If you simply put out bins and you put a simple recycle on it and simple trash and assume that that's going to be enough to get people to engage, that everybody's literate and everybody knows what they're doing, you probably already know from experience that unfortunately doesn't work that way. And that's because most people simply aren't really that focused on what they're doing. And so the question is, how do you overcome that barrier? How do you get people to nonetheless still do the right thing when sorting, even when they're only giving it a very peripheral part of their attention? And the high level, the main thing that you have to do is just simply communicate that these are separate bins. One is for one thing, one is for another, and let people know that they actually have a choice. And then the bins have to communicate themselves to the best ability you can in that split second that you have someone's attention, that it is for recycling or it is for trash. And at least on a very, very high level, what they are supposed to put into each one of them. So for best practices, some very high level points is you want to make sure that the bins are color coded and very distinct. And so I use this example of the photo on the right side shows these two silver bins. This was from a convention center at a show I went to a number of years ago, and this is kind of a classic example of a bin that if people aren't paying a lot of close attention, they tend to treat them interchangeably, and so you can anticipate seeing more contamination in an arrangement like that. The more the bins can really distinguish themselves. If you can cover the entire thing in separate colors, that's fantastic. Big signage is fantastic. It's kind of by degree, so I know in many situations it may not be practical to have your entire bin totally different colors, but just know that in principle, the more that they stand out and distinguish themselves, the more successful they are going to be at getting people to use them appropriately. Labels and signage, again, some other just high-level principles. If people are not spending a whole lot of time studying the signs, then you want to make it really brief to make sure that they at least absorb the core key information that you want them to get. And so, again, if you look at the bin or the photo on the upper right-hand corner, this was taken from a World's Fair a few years ago. And that laundry list of dozens of different items may be appropriate in somebody's residential bins where they're going to spend more time and interact with it. But in a concert venue or in a convention center where they're there for just a day, possibly, that's way too much information. They will never absorb it. The other thing I point out is that it has to stand out. If you look at this bin, the photo on the lower right-hand corner, these are bins that you can't even see what the label is. It may say it on the rim once you're standing up against it and looking down on it, but if somebody's walking by, this is kind of the perspective from which they oftentimes are making that decision what they're going to do and which bin they're going to approach. So you need to be able to see the sign as you actually approach it to distinguish them. So I love these. This one on the center left. This is an example, I think, of a good sign. It's broad. You can see this as you approach. It gives you the core information. There may be a level of detail that you can't get in there simply because you don't have enough of people's attention to get to it, but that's kind of the trade-off. It's understood that you're never going to be able to communicate everything and every piece of detail to address every question people have. But as long as you're getting the very basic ones in a setting like a venue, again, like a concert venue or another, which is a very different dynamic than somebody's workplace where you might be able to give them more information. And then finally, I'll point out this bin or the photo on the left. This is from Arizona State University's stadium, and they've got a great zero waste program. They actually have no trash stream because to the point we've been discussing with some of the other case studies, they have completely made their entire packaging recyclable or compostable, so they have no trash generated in the stadium. But what you see on this one here, I like the opportunity to have kind of the message, the promotional signage that talks about other more of the awareness side beyond simply conveying the who, what information. So where you can have bins that give you that opportunity, I think that's also something to take advantage of, because it's not always easy finding platforms and ways to engage people in a public space setting like that. Some other just general principles, having restrictive openings, ones that force people to slow down and actually concentrate on dropping items into a bin. That's another crucial thing that helps to cut down the contamination. If you have a wide opening that people can just do almost like a tossing a basketball from a few feet away, you're much more likely to see higher contamination and people not engaging correctly with that. And that's especially important with the recycling streams. The waste you generally want to have be wider and more open, because you want that to serve as the default. If folks simply are not going to try on any level, you want them to at least be using the waste as their backup. In terms of placing bins, putting the bin is an absolute essential. You have to have trash and recycling directly next to each other, and I say that underlining the word directly. Even having them a few feet apart sets you up for a situation like this, where you can see this was from the North Carolina State Fair from a number of years ago. A colleague of mine showed this, but you have a trash bin and you have a recycling bin pretty close to each other, but simply by virtue of the flow of traffic, you can see how that blue recycling bin just became the default catch-all for whatever people had, because either they didn't see or they simply weren't willing to walk the extra 5 feet over to that trash bin. And this is just another slide that illustrates the same point of keeping in mind, really understanding the flow of traffic and where you actually are placing bins on a very site-specific scenario. If you're approaching from, let's say, the right, and you're walking up, you can see both the blue recycling and the black trash on opposite sides of this planter. But if you're approaching from the left side, all you see is that recycling bin. And again, you can assume that many people, if not most, are going to treat any bin sitting by itself, they're going to treat as a default everything. So if you want people to make a distinction, you have to make obvious that that they have a choice to make in the first place. So I'll pause there. As I said, there's a lot of this kind of nuance that goes into how you have an effective infrastructure that will actually get people to use the bins correctly. I'll point out, I think one of the resources that Rebecca is going to drop into the chat box is a best practice guide that goes into much greater depth that I created for Keep America Beautiful a number of years ago, and you can find a link to that in the chat box. The final thing I'll point out is something to keep in mind is the whole concept of branding. We understand from a marketing perspective the value of branding, of having a consistent logo, a consistent color scheme, all those things that help to reinforce people's expectations of whatever it is that you're trying to brand. And that very much applies to recycling as well. So oftentimes when you set up an infrastructure over time, you choose, whoever's making the purchases finds the bins that they like, and they put those in place. The next person comes along 2 or 3 years later and might find something different. But there is a great value in coming up with a standard and then sticking with that across your facility over time. Put conscious thought into what you want those colors to be so that you stick with that whenever you're doing bin purchases. I'll point out that there is increasingly over the last 5-10 years, we're seeing an emerging real, at least informal standard, if not formal one, on colors around blue standing out as being for recycling. There's a stronger association, surveys show, between blue and recycling. And likewise, compost for green. And these photos are all taken in different locations in San Francisco, where they actually have ordinance that requires all bins have to conform to these schemes. And that's the reason you see that. This helps people understand wherever you go, blue is going to be recycling. And even if that is not the case at your local facility, you at least at a minimum want to try and keep it consistent within your venues. To the extent that you can conform with whatever the color standard is for the residential program nearby or for other major facilities, those are all things that are worth keeping in mind and trying your best to coordinate with. It's nothing's perfect, and we deal with real world situations, but these are sort of the ideals that you should keep in mind with when you're planning your infrastructure. So I'll stop there, and actually we're now going to switch over to the panel section of our discussion. So I'm going to turn off the my screen and invite everybody to turn on their cameras, and we will shift modes now. So Jana, Amy, Lindsay, thank you again for your great presentations. Let's go ahead and start off with some additional questions that have come in, and then I have some of my own questions that I can start to seed in. But a lot of the chat in the question box is coming down to the packaging, and a lot of folks are interested about that. So let me throw out a couple questions, and in no particular order, whoever wants to take these. So here's a first one. How has compostable serviceware evolved from your experience? And this is Nicole is making this comment, and I actually remember this myself. If you go back 10 or 15 years ago, a lot of the compostable serviceware, the quality was I can't remember putting compostable spoons into a bowl of soup and seeing that the spoon wilts. But in general, from your experience where you're using that, does it perform to the standards that you would expect for your facilities?
I can jump in. So yes, definitely, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, these products were really expensive and the quality was not as great. I think what we're starting to see is, yes, like the melting spoon and the, is kind of not as big of a barrier. One thing I'm starting to see though is more fiber-based products. So looking at the bamboos or the, instead of it being a corn-based product, being like a sugar bagasse product, and those are actually what we're seeing. So there's more variety, and actually, in my experience, those are from the composter side, the compost facility side, they are more willing and interested in those products, and more are actually saying that they will not take those PLA products, so those corn-based products. So that's a barrier that's like a real for some of the destinations that we work in, is that, like, say in California, I do an event in Anaheim, and their facility, so they won't take the PLA product anymore. So really having to look more towards some of those fiber-based products. But in terms of like quality and usability and price, I think those have all seen major improvements.
Mm-hmm. And Amy, I know you mentioned that you work with Cedar Grove, and I know that they've been pretty active in trying to educate facilities and whoever is using compostable ware that this issue Lindsay raised is really an important one. You need to make sure that you have a compost market that will actually be able to take it and can actually get through their system. I don't know if there's anything factors when you were choosing what you were going to use that to address that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that you have to look into if you do decide you want to go the compostable route, because I mean, as Jana said, like where she is, that's something that won't work, right? So it doesn't really work if you're like, we're going to do all compost, but they can't handle it. So definitely doing that research and finding out where everything is going is really important in that process. And when you're going, there's so many different products on the line that are marked as compostable, but not all compostable products are created equally, and you just really need to to do your research and know that what you're buying can actually break down in the industrial composting facility that it's going to. Otherwise, it's just going to end up in the landfill, and you're going to be spending more money on packaging that isn't doing what you want it to do. And we don't want that.
Yeah. And one could argue too that if you are using compostable packaging and you're not actually composting it, it's going to the landfill. Really, you're replacing material with something that is actually going to biodegrade, and you don't want that to happen in the landfill because it turns into methane.
Yeah, and I think that's a misunderstanding that a lot of people don't understand as well, is like it's still bioplastic, and so if it's not going to an industrial composting facility where it can be broken down properly, then it's actually worse than plastic in that regard. It takes longer for it to break down in a natural environment, and so you need to be really careful when you are picking your products to make sure that it's something that can be broken down correctly in the facility that it's going to. Otherwise, you're just creating more problems.
Yeah. Amy, another question we had for you. Did you look at the economics of reusables?
So yes, that's actually one of the things we've looked at as well. Is there a reusable cup program that could work for us? I've talked to multiple different places, even one that you don't actually take the cup home with you, right? It's something where the company actually comes and takes it and then cleans it and then brings it back. Unfortunately, in venues our size, that's really challenging. They want to be in places where they have more, where that company is actually also making money. So we're not quite there yet, but hopefully it's one of those things where if enough venues in the area adopt that sort of practice, that's something where a venue our size would be able to come in and use a program like that. So that's definitely something that we want to do in the future. We're just not quite at that point yet where that would work for us.
Got it. And I know, Lindsay, you mentioned that you guys are looking at aluminum cups, or you have gone to aluminum cups. Is that right?
Yeah, Red Rocks, I think this season is switching to, they have a partnership with Ball for their aluminum cups. And I know there is a life cycle analysis looking at the impact of single-use cups versus of plastic, aluminum, and compost versus reusables that is supposed to come out later this summer that I've been really interested in. And so I read about it in Green Biz. I don't know the study and I haven't seen it yet, but I'm on their mailing list. But that's something I think, all of those factors to consider for sure.
Yeah, that's one I look forward to hearing about too. I guess one of the questions then that I have on this topic is when you talk about trying to shift over to a recoverable stream, I think several of you made the point that this the importance of having something that is all one or the other, or is that something that you considered all recyclable or all compostable to address the fact that at a concert people are not focused on trying to understand, well, the straw can go here but the fork can't. The value of trying to come up with one consistent everything goes here. So I'm framing that as a statement, but if there's anything you want to add to that, or if that went into your thinking.
I've heard, oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say,
I was going to say that's definitely something that,
you go.
Amy, your turn.
Sorry. I mean, I mentioned that in my, what I said is that's something that was really important to us, is just like making it so you're kind of taking away their option of where they can throw it. And if everything is compostable, then it's all going to go into one bin. And I think, we do still sell aluminum. We do sell some beer and wine that's in aluminum cans. And we're also moving to, aluminum water, water instead of the single-use plastic water bottles as well. So we did still want to have that option for recycling for aluminum, but I think that if it's very clear when you're going to the bins that will be next to each other, okay, well, my can will go in this thing where it says cans only. Okay, everything else goes in here. I think it makes it really simple for that person when they're making that split second decision on where they're going to throw their items. And you know, in Seattle, there can be like a small amount of contamination in those bins. I can't remember the percentage. I want to say it's like 5% or something maybe. So if for some reason someone brought in like a candy bar or something and they throw that wrapper in there, it's not going to contaminate it to the point of where it can't go to the appropriate place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was just gonna say, we do, if you can drink out of it, recycle it. If it's something you eat off of, have it be compostable. So that's like an adage that we've kind of adopted. Because obviously if there's food in something that's recyclable, then it's already contaminated. But then we have so many beverage containers that are aluminum, or like a paperboard, or you know, something like that can be recycled but not composted. So that's like the distinction we've kind of made.
And being able to distill it down into a slogan is
Mhm.
helps. I have one other question, and then just on this topic, and then we'll move on to another. But Kiki had a question about contract language, and for either of you, did you have specific contract language or terms that you put into your concession contracts to ensure that the suppliers were providing the right compatible packaging? And this is the context of aluminum cups, but I think that applies in general. Amy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we're actually in the process of changing concessionaires, at least at our two clubs, and that's something that I brought up in the process when we were talking to the different concessionaires. Is, you know, this is something that's very important to us, and it's something that I definitely would want to see in the contract, so that that's something that they're upholding. It's also at Marymore, we don't actually oversee the program there. It's actually King County that does that. But the concessionaire, we do have food trucks there, and the concessionaire, that's one of the things that they require when they're getting the food truck providers, is like everything has to be in something that is compostable or recyclable. Like they can't have any products that aren't compostable or recyclable, and that's something that they require, and that's something that they put in those agreements when they're hiring those vendors.
Great. Lindsay, anything you wanted to add to that?
No.
Fair enough. Let's go ahead and shift over. Jana, I want to bring you back into the conversation. We had a question, a big one for stadiums, tailgate. That's a whole different animal. Is that something that you try to do with the Baltimore stadiums?
Yes, with MLB, there is no tail. Can you hear me? Should I move it closer again?
If you can, yeah. It's still a little muddy.
So with MLB, they don't tailgate. However, with NFL, yes, obviously they tailgate. So we had actually partnered with Green Street Academy at one point, and they would go through the parking lots and give out recyclable bags and trash bags. Now, how well they achieve that remains to be seen. But it is our effort to say, hey, at least you know you can recycle in this bin versus throwaway trash in not bin but bag. You know what I mean? But yeah, we did give it an effort.
Got it. Yeah. From my experience, tailgating, whether it's this also applies, Lindsay, to your situation, but from my experience, tailgating is a much harder stream to address than inside the stadium, because as we know, you don't have that same control over what's being generated, and if folks are not necessarily in the mindset of recycling and all when they're inside a venue, it's even more so after they've had a few beers and they're outside afterward. But I know there are some good resources out there that I see for college game day tailgating. Number of case studies, Penn State, Arizona State, others have done. I'm happy to point people to if you want to contact me on the side.
Okay.
Great. Let me come back up here again. Let's talk a little bit about employee engagement. Because this is, I know, Jana, you touched on this a little bit with yours, but techniques, other ways of engaging employees and getting them on board. Lindsay, you had the great example of actually getting getting employees to go out and actually do a sort, which I love. There's no better way of getting someone to understand an issue than when they have to actually sort through trash. But I'm curious, Amy, or are there any other ideas that you would suggest for how to address staff turnover? Do you do periodic trainings, or is it how do you prompt and keep folks knowing what the system is over time?
Well, I think, when we do a yearly training of staff, that's one of the things that we'll go over. And then obviously that doesn't work when it's a new employee. So that's just part of the training process when they come in on their first day, is letting them know, like this is very important to our venues and you're a part of that. And this is the appropriate receptacle where each thing goes, so that they understand their part in it. And also that empowers them, if patrons ask, where does this go? They can direct them, to put the correct things in the correct places. So I think that's something that's really important, because if our staff can't even follow the directions, then how do we expect the rest of the people coming in our venues to do the same?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We also do an annual training, and we bring in our waste hauler, and then our staff is able, and this is at the Colorado Convention Center, and then our staff is able to ask every single random question that they have. So, and sometimes like the process is changing, especially with the evolution of the recycling market. And so, sometimes they've like added a new thing that can be recycled, and then sometimes, that's changed where they're not accepting something anymore. And so it's helpful for me, it's helpful for everyone. And then we also do a quarterly Champion for the Environment Award, where we recognize someone from, any of the departments. So whether it's an IT person who's come up with a way to reduce paper waste, or whatever it is, and they get recognition at our all staff meeting, and a $100 gift card and a certificate, which is pretty cool. And then we also during Earth Week, which is Earth Day, we do a whole competition thing where they take a quiz and they commit to actions and all these things, and they get a gift card, or they can donate to an organization. So those are some different areas.
Great. Good. Let me pivot the question and take it to a front of the house context of attendees. This is obviously a much more difficult place to try to educate and get in front of people when they're not there to be educated. But I'm curious, Jana, or any of you, are there things that you've done that you found to be an opportunity to get in front of people?
I know what I want to do. I know what I would love to try. Unfortunately, as a landlord and not the person that does the marketing for the teams, I can't force them into it. But there's nothing I want more than on the Orioles side. It's two games that are played on the Jumbotron, and it's the crab shuffle, so we have Old Bay, because everything in Baltimore is covered in Old Bay seasoning. And so we have these crabs do the shuffle on the Jumbotron, and you have to pick which one has the ball under it. Why can't we pick something that has a recycling message, so that then at the end of the game we can say, hey, recycle your cups, da 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 da. Or I would love to have, player engagement. Maybe film a clip that goes up during the third inning that has, one of our players that's recycling this, or walking up to a trash can to figure out which one it should go in. Things like that, I feel like, or it's like, oh, my favorite player does that. Like, I'm gonna do it too. I don't know, just a different way of engagement. And I probably am thinking small. I'm sure there's other ways to go about it. But unfortunately, as the landlord, I can't make the tenants do it or make the teams do it. You know, even same with Ravens, you know, but I tend to kind of leave the Ravens alone a little bit because they were able to push the message before I even arrived at MSA. So I feel like they're already kind of moving along. Could it be improved upon? Of course. But that's something that I would really love to see at Royal Park. But I don't know. We'll see. I want to keep hoping.
Yeah. Lindsay or Amy, anything you want to add from your perspectives?
Well, you know, one of the things that we've talked about is, you know, obviously having information on our website so that everyone knows what our, you know, what our initiatives are, and then including them in our know before you go emails to patrons when they go to know that this is what we're doing. And then, you know, on Earth Day and things like that, we have run some, you know, like special like recycling things where people, you know, can bring additional items like electronics or things to recycle at our venues. So I think there's different ways, you know, and it's something that we're looking at how we can be more engaging with both the fans and also with the artists, you know, who have been, you know, creating a considerable amount of waste when they come into the venues as well. And so that's something that we're working towards, is just educating people so that they know, you know, the choices that they make matter and they affect things.
Absolutely.
Got it. But I know our time is wrapping up. Lindsay, I wanted to give you one opportunity. You wanted to introduce sports index survey that's being done. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, sure. So one of the, you know, there's so many different pieces to, you know, what makes a successful waste diversion program, but one of those being, you know, metrics and being able to track year to year your progress. But I'm also working on a different project called the Sustainable Sports Index, which is the first of its kind to benchmark the social and environmental impacts of the sports industry. So it is looking at a wide variety, including waste, but to really try to get this baseline understanding of what the sports impact is. So I'm just gonna put it out there to check it out. It's free for venues to participate, and then we're really excited to put out the report at the end of September. So our goal is then, once we all know where we're at as an industry, we can, you know, progress towards, you know, different practices to improve on those in those various areas.
Fantastic. And I'll just point out that Rebecca just dropped the link to that survey is in the chat box now, so if folks are interested to do that. And I'll also point out that we're going to be sending out an email in the next few days that'll have both the recording that you can watch for this if you want to rewatch it, but we'll also have all these different resources that we've been mentioning during the program. We'll include links to it with those. So just to wrap up, again, I want to point out there are a couple things that we offer at Busch Systems on our end. We do provide consulting services in addition to being a bin manufacturer, and we can bring expertise to help with your planning for your facilities, true advising, planning bin infrastructure, waste audits. Those are all services we do. We'd love to see RFPs and have a chance to respond to those if you get. And then also point out that I have a blog series that I write on a number of different topics, all kind of centering it back around best practices and behavior, how you get people to recycle and participate. So we'll include links to that blog series as well when we send out our message later in the next few days. And let me pull my camera back up here, or my screen back up again. Thank you, Lindsay, Jana, Amy. I really appreciate the presentations you did. These were fantastic. Some great information. It's from my experience, it's always helpful having run a facility. It's always helpful to see how somebody else does it, and so having that opportunity is very much appreciated. So thank you again. And if folks do want to follow up with any of our panelists, you can find their emails there. And with that, we're officially done. I will point out that we are going to shift over, for those of you who are interested, I do have a couple of colleagues, Michelle and Brian, who are going to join. And for those who are interested to learn more about Busch Systems products, the bins we sell, they will stay on to chat with anybody who wishes to. If you're not interested, feel free to jump off now. We'll end the program here. I will, as a transition, I'm going to play a quick video. Just for our panelists, thank you again. You can go and turn off your cameras now, and we'll close off. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So this is, just real quick, this is a video. I'm going to turn my own camera off. This is a video that we produced with a Canadian hockey team, the Kamut Chargers, I believe it is. I'm probably getting that wrong, but I'm going to stream this video now.
Hey, what's the deal with shooting for zero waste? Well, all you gotta do, put the biscuit in the basket.
Come on, man. Straws are garbage, and empty cups and lids go in recycling.
Cameron, let's keep the home rink clean. Shoot for zero waste.
Great. That was a short video. Brian, Michelle, I'm going to hand it over to you now and let you take it away. Thank you.
Welcome to our tailgate party. Although we will not be giving out food or drinks today, we are giving out free expert advice on our own Busch products. We've got a few products here to showcase today with you. I'm here, my name's Michelle Dunn. I'm here with my colleague Brian. So I think we're going to start off by showcasing some of our products that are most popular within stadiums, conventions, venues today, and then take it from there. And then we'll open it up for any additional questions that people may have. I know we have a question already on the live chat, so we'll address that first, and then we'll roll into some questions. So Brian, if you want to start us off here.
Well, in terms of the Evolve units, you saw that in the quick commercial that was shown there. Great exposure for the Evolve unit. Similar signage and customized signage was shown in that video. But that was something that the arena had launched at the initial placement of all the bins, and they just wanted awareness to the attendees on what the new bins are, how to recycle, and get everyone on board. And I think that it did a great exposure for these units. As I mentioned, customization is key with Busch Systems. So signage, everything can be completely customized to your needs. As an example, this bin has the front panel on here. It is a full plastic bin. Even the lids are, complete. While it looks like metal, it's a complete plastic bin. So durability is key. And again, with the sign frames on there, it's a great exposure tool for your program.
Just to point out and add to what Brian was saying there on the Evolves, they can be connected together. They're modular, so you can magnetize as large as your program is. If you have composting, you can add that. Source separation, again, we can do cans and bottles. We can do paper. We do have the option as well to have magnets on them. They're a 50-gallon, these ones here, the cube, but we do have several different sizes and several different streams to add on, as small as a 23-gallon all the way up to 50, but including a 36-gallon as well. They come colored, so I know in Alec and what a big talk is best practice is this color separation. So they do come stocked in blue, green, gray, and black as well if you want to separate from a different color scheme. They're, as Brian mentioned, are roto-molded, so very, very durable, easy to clean, no fingerprints, and just an all-around perfect pick for any type of convention, stadium. They're very popular in malls and movie theaters as well, just because of that high volume that you're going to see in there. And then again, the durability and no fingerprints as well.
And one more point, as Michelle mentioned, various colors, but there's various sizing as well and different shapes. So we have the ellipse, we have the cube slim, and so various different options available for your program.
So that's one of our most popular indoor containers. I'm going to flip over to one of our most popular outdoor containers. We've recently, in the last 2 years, started working with recycled lumber. This behind me is a closed loop product. They are made out of 96% recycled milk jugs. Now, as Alec had mentioned, and many of our panelists talked to you about restrictive openings, this one here, because our showroom is so small, we've picked smaller items that will fit in this room and in this space. However, in this particular case, you will see the labels here as well, along with the signage, which again, you can customize because that is a big product and push for Busch Systems is our customization, but you can also customize with restrictive openings. We have several different colors to choose from this is a gray, but again, a blue, a cedar, black. You can mix and match anything from your door. This one here is a double system. It's a smaller double system, but you can see that the liners are inside. Sorry to make so much noise. This is a 23-gallon liner, but we do customize these, and I have made, not personally, but all the way up to a 50-gallon size-wise gallon inside as well. So they can be custom to your program with different sizes. They come in single, double, triple. We have options available with the back sign frames as well to really showcase and highlight what you're collecting in each and to increase that diversion rate. Again, unfortunately, we don't have all of our products here to really showcase a different one with blue, black, and green to highlight the different streams, but hopefully you'll get the gist with this small one here in terms of the labeling and the openings and whatnot. So great.
And going alongside with another outdoor option would be the Expression. And this is a newer bin for us. It's available in a full single stream or split up into 2 streams. It also has restrictive openings if required. But the nice thing with this unit, again, full plastic, available in gray and sandstone. But essentially all 4 sides of this unit can have customized labels or logos, sorry. So it's as simple as opening up the door, removing the lid, sliding out your old signage, putting in new signage, putting that lid back on, locking it up, and you're ready to go.
Wonderful. A common theme with Busch Systems and our products is different sizes. We realize that every program is different. So often what you'll find, as we talked about the Evolves, is several different sizes available. And that holds true for our Aristata series as well. This is a very popular container in convention centers in more suites. I believe, speaking of our panelists today, Jana, she has one of these units or a few of them in their suites at the Camden Yards Stadium as well. They look very, very nice, high-end, sharp, variety of different finishes. This is a smaller size scale version, but we do have an extra large version as well. Again, in the double, single, triple. This one has the additional signage going back to that best practices and the restrictive openings. It also has labels on the front and color coordinated signage on the back. Again, you can customize that as well. If we open it here, it has a nice stainless steel lid. I'm trying to not make very much noise. However, one thing that we do pride ourselves on at Busch Systems as well is ergonomics. We like to take into consideration those people that are actually emptying the different streams. How hard is it on their backs? What is it doing to them physically? That's really, really important. And our R&D team takes a lot of initiative and a lot of research into considering all of the factors, which is why they have designed the ergonomic liner. So although I just pulled it out, it does, and I'll showcase it on the side, hook onto the side of the bin. So they're not reaching down as far to lift up the bags. I showed it on the outside. I should have showed it on the inside. However, I'm hoping that you get the drift. It's got a very easy handle to dump, but also you're not reaching down as low and you're just grabbing that bag from inside the container. So there are just 2 sort of products that Brian and I decided to showcase for both indoor and outdoor. We wanted to, for those of you that might not be able to stay right until the end, we thought we would go into the questions at this time. I know that we have one waiting already. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the question or not, Brian, or if you want me to take over.
It had something to do with eco-safe bags or compostable bags.
It did, yep. The question actually, we sell miniature kitchen composters. Nothing I can grab within reach. I see one over here, but one of the questions was, and they love this bin, it's really an under-the-counter bin for composting. We have it with a solid or a vented lid, but their question was, where do we find bags for this? Now, Busch Systems has actually teamed up with a company called EcoSafe, and they specialize in manufacture compostable bags. So although we are experts with bins, we're not experts in bags. So that's actually the perfect company that manufactures any of the compostable bags that will fit inside our containers. we'll be sure to email that information out. And I'm hoping, Rebecca, if you're behind the scenes, we'll make sure that anyone who does have a question today will get all of your information so that we can email you personally with either answers to your questions, links with our product specs, or just our contact information as well. So without further ado, if I'm not sure if Rebecca, or hopefully people can hear, if we do have any other questions at this time, this would be a great time to answer them and get right into it.
Yeah, I'm here, guys. Thank you so much. That presentation was great. Looking into different specifics there, it's great to see them and see how they might work specifically in the stadiums as well. The bags, the liners was one of our specific questions. We don't have too many specific questions coming in right now with regards to the bin. So if anybody is on and still has specific questions, please feel free. There is on the side bar there, you should see a questions area. So if you just want to drop them in there, and I'll be able to pass those along. Again, we will get to as many as we can. And yes, any of the questions we might not get to, or if you feel that perhaps your question just might be more conversational, you might want to have a quick conversation with someone, just let us know, because we can also be in touch as well. A question that has come through here for you guys is, do any of our clients use these containers without bags?
The option is there. All of our, or most of our units are going to have some sort of a liner or a bag ring. So essentially, if correct me if I'm wrong, if they want to use it without a bag on a liner, you're more than welcome to. However, there will be obviously cleaning concerns and keeping that liner spit clean.
There is certain bins that we do manufacture that are not an option to have as a liner. This particular one in front of us, it is the Boca. It's our stainless steel Cadillac. Of course, it's locked, which is one of the nice features about this bin. However, it does showcase a bag ring, although it has almost like a boot tray at the end. So if your bag does rip or falls down, it's sure to capture those materials. But it's not an option for this particular bin to have a liner. Again, very, very popular that we've sold into convention centers. You can label the front, label the sides, however you like, along with higher ed. Again, it's one of our top sellers if you have the budget. But having a liner is not an option. That goes true with the Evolve as well. It has to sit in a bag ring system. It's a tight clinch, so there's never any issues. Of all that we've ever sold with this unit, we've never had an issue with the bags falling down or not being a secure fit. I do have a few. I specialize now in schools and dealing with a lot of the education vertical and sector. I have a few schools that actually don't use bags. They really encourage, or maybe in some cases, bags are actually banned and they're no longer accepted. As Brian mentioned, it's really important that that you do take the steps to properly clean out those containers so that you don't have any issues with smell and factors like that. So it can be done. It certainly has with our little mini hanging waste baskets. Lots of people use them without bags, and they're dishwasher friendly. They go in, they clean nicely, and out they go again. Hopefully that answered your question.
That was great, thank you. A couple more questions coming through here, and also just a thought at some point in time with our front bin there. Are you able to, when you open it up, tip it forward just a little bit? I'm not sure how heavy that is, just so we could see a little bit more on our camera view the interior there. There we go. So that shows. Yeah, that's perfect.
Very wide opening. It's basically the retention ring. Secures the bag in place, and therefore it's not going to fall down into the unit itself.
That's great.
Thank goodness we have Brian's muscles here. This bin is extremely heavy. It's not easy to lift. I would never recommend it. There's no lifting it over your head, that's for sure. We had a hard time even dragging it from one spot to another. So it just goes to show you that it's a heavy duty bin. It's certainly not going to walk away or get kicked in any sort of way.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Thank you. Another question.
Go ahead, Free.
Just another question coming through here for venues like stadiums, as that's a lot of our audience at the moment that have shifted to compost and recycle only collection. Do you see venues adding a smaller garbage or landfill bin to the collection location when contamination becomes an issue in the blue and green bins? So for example, big bins in green and blue and maybe a smaller bin in black?
In my success, that's what I found, is that usually you're going to find a larger stream with the waste and the recycling, and then a smaller stream for the organics. As well, a large organic stream can be cumbersome in terms of servicing. So if it's going to be serviced regularly, it's great. If the servicing is not going to be as frequent, obviously a larger bin becomes an issue because it's very difficult to service. But that's from my success. I think I've found larger streams for waste, recycling, smaller stream for organics.
I was just going to kind of, and that's the real focus and why we've done some modular systems as well, is that not just so that you can add on and different shapes and sizes, but so that you can mix and match. Really, we're looking to promote zero waste, recycling, composting, and those are often the larger streams, especially with composting. In my experience, it is a lesser stream for waste, if they even have it at all, to sort of put less emphasis and focus on that. I think the most important factor, especially with best practices, is clear signage, clear labeling, clear colors, clear openings and restrictive openings as well, to just really increase that diversion rate and promote recycling and less waste.
Of course. I also know as well, we can let some people know with our bins, signage obviously very key. Almost every bin essentially has signage there, and we do have the ability to do custom. Of course, we have suggested signage and things that can go along with it, but of course, custom for every program, definitely available for the bins as well. I know we do have some bins. If you could touch on where, you know, there's the signage availability to show the waste streams, but also other sides where you could do advertising space as well. I believe that one bin, sorry, Brian, right beside you there is a good example of that.
Definitely. Yeah, as it was stated, we have all of our stock options available. However, we have full customization capabilities, whether it be advertisement revenue, whether it be a multi-8 stream unit, you're breaking it out into coffee cups, what have you, we can create that customized bin for your needs.
I think branding is so important as well, just also customizing in terms of the signage and the advertising, but also branding in the sense of your own logo. And we have a very active marketing and R&D team, and we do all of our customization and our printing in-house. So we have wonderful mock-ups that we're able to provide with this successful team that we have, that you can then visualize what would it look like if you wanted to see an advertisement on the bin. How can I, and that's what that team does, is sort of help you visualize, this is exactly what it would look like. This is what I want. Let's make it happen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think we're sort of got one more question here. And then if you guys have any more sort of points you wanted to add in there, that'd be very helpful. A question came through here, cigarette bins, as that was touched a little bit through the presentation there. Does Busch have any style of bin or a specific cigarette waste bin?
We unfortunately no longer carry those bins. We used to have them. We just didn't have a lot of success. We decided to really put our focus in on those areas that we are experts. So although we did distribute them at one time, unfortunately we don't. One thing about having a full team is that we are often able to become a resource for you. So although I don't have those bins, or we don't have those bins to sell, we would be happy to provide any other company out there or links that you should maybe contact in the future to get some quotes or some pricing that do have those bins for you.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll go with one more question that just came through here from Pat. How about collection of reusables? Any customers or venues collecting reusables in a particular type of bin, like reusable plastic cups, for example?
Again, that boils down to preference in terms of the bin as well as customization. I've always stated that if the end user can't figure out what stream that is to go within 2 to 3 seconds, it's not going to be successful. So again, customization of signage, clear indication of what the stream involves, and we have that full capability of customizing that to your needs. Definitely.
We've certainly had customers that have had that stream of reusables, and it's been a successful part of their program. So it is something that we can do. We unfortunately, because the room is so small, we have so many products. And this last year, we've really put a focus in on PPE containers, as well as just creating our new Thrive line, which focuses on safe space and opening up venues as these stadiums and convention centers start to open up. We want to be there to help you with creating that safe space and offering, you know, systems like gel dispensers and sanitizers. And so not just focusing on recycling and waste, but also that extra side of things. So as much as we only have a glimpse or a snapshot of what we can offer you, we have so much more.
That's a great point. And yes, we do have most of those products. There's a few little videos, everything. Our website is very interactive. Hop on there, take a look around. We do have our safe spaces section there, as Michelle had mentioned some of those products. So it's definitely a great place to go to view. And yeah, we're open to any questions. Email us anytime. I think if Brian and Michelle, if you have any final little points, we can put in there little tips or tricks, but I think that's most of the questions that we have for today.
I just personally want to thank everyone for attending the webinar today. It's a pleasure meeting everyone, and I look forward to working with you directly.
Great. Yep. As Brian said, thanks again for attending. We look forward to working with you in the future. We had some wonderful panelists today. I've actually had my experience of working with Jana and Camden Yards and M&T Bank. So wonderful, wonderful experience there. And we look forward to many more. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, that was great. Thank you so much for everyone for coming. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to send an email to sales@buschsystems.com. But of course, we will be following up. You will be able to get a recording of the webinar, as well as there might have been some questions that were asked that our panelists might not have gotten. We will be passing those along to our panelists, and they'll be able to answer those for you, and we'll send those off to give you a full sort of question and answer sheet that you'll be able to review as well. And again, please feel free to take a look at our website and direct any questions through to our team, and we'll be happy to help. Thank you so much, and we hope you all have a great night.